50, 106.
50 and 106. So what is 106? 50. So AST was always higher than ALT. That's another thing. Why is the AST higher than ALT? So we will let. So probably some of the enzymatic pathways are like the enzymatic pathway which produces ALT and which produces AST. They are working differently. So the AST is getting produced more, the ALT is not getting produced. But there is inflammation. Now whether this inflammation is because of alcohol or is it because of a virus? That is what we have to think. Now what do we do if we are thinking of virus? We can rule out all the viruses by doing a viral serology. Like we can look for hepatitis B and C very easily, and we have done that.
Yes, because negative.
So both hepatitis
function
B and
happens.
C are absent, but then there are other viruses like A and E. That would be more common to cause a viral hepatitis. So how do we rule out viral A and E? We have not sent those because they are very expensive, because they don't get done easily. So that's why they are very expensive tests. So it has not been sent. But yes, we can assume that there could be a viral hepatitis because it's safe to assume why? Because there is no treatment for any viral hepatitis. I mean, at least acute hepatitis. Although B and C can be treated at a chronic phase, but in acute phase, there is no treatment necessary. So we will assume that yes, that is there, but that cannot explain the ascitic fluid collections, the loculations. So, and maybe the SBP. Whereas of course is because of portal hypertension. This could have been there 4 years back when he was first director of jaundice and first he had the problems. So what we currently need in this patient is a very good history, which I am hoping one of the third semesters will take by directly talking to the patient relative on phone. So we will give you the phone number to the third semester. You will talk to the patient attendant. Then you will give us a much better history since his childhood. You start with childhood and you tell us how he took to drinking, which made him land up in this position. Okay, so that is what we need. We are interested to the root of his problem, the root cause. Okay, so that will be brought to us by the history of the events that you will describe, and you will get it on telemedicine, telephonic conversation with the patient's daughter. Most of the time, we just look at creatinine. That's the most reliable one, and it is much more well excreted than any other. So almost 99% excretion is there with creatinine, and that's why we find it very reliable. So creatinine is normal, means his kidney functions are good, but it hasn't worsened yet. And he has 2+ albuminuria, which is not a part of his function, but yes, it has damaged his glomeruli, we can say. So we can quantify that albuminuria. You might find that after quantification, the albumin is normal, because very often it happens that this albuminuria 2+ is a qualitative color test, which is done by the lab intern who has put the stick and he is interpreting this color and saying 2+. So that may be faulty at times. It's a very, very direct interpretation of the color. So we should basically do the quantitative estimation, which is of course again a color interpretation, but this time it's machine readable. So that's slightly different. ఎలా ఉన్నారు?
दूर तक होटल पर
दूर तक पोटले. अच्छा, she is having itching, which is not going away. Oh, lot of itching. Just look at the itching having. All the itch marks. ఎప్పటి నుంచి దూరత పోట్లే?
మన నుంచి ఎక్కువ అవుతుంది.
మన్నా నుంచి ఎక్కువైంది. So a lot of itching in her palms. See, so look at her legs. So there is some. You see, we can't see the tendon here also properly. Look at this leg. No tendons are visible. And when I am putting my finger here, they seem to be, going in. You see? They're going in. I'm putting my finger here. They're just going in. They're getting dipped in. If I put my finger here also in the shin bone, they'll just get. See? So there's a big, I can feel it. It's a big depression here. So this means she's having edema, generalized edema. So what could be the reason for generalized edema? So you see the knee here. The knee is as if it is something wrong in the knee as well. It's slightly going away. Is it like a valgus deformity?
Valgus means?
Yeah, valgus is like a gum. It is going to come here. Varus is like something else. So anyway, so valgus is like a gum. They are coming towards each other. The knee is coming towards each other.
Knock
That is,
knees and,
yeah, knock knee. Basically, it's a knock knee. So why the knock knee?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it can be multiple reasons, like something has happened to the knees because of inflammation and possibly osteoarthritis, as Dr. KV is saying, or it could be even rickets. You know, that's a very early area, or even a renal rickets from birth. So okay. So she has got anansarca and she has got shortness of breath, isn't it? So we showed you a tachypnea in the previous patient. Now here, can you make out the ups and downs? She is also quite tachypnic, and we don't have her saturation. Can we put the saturation probe here? And she is on oxygen. If you can see this line, this is the oxygen line. This is going, and with oxygen, what is the saturation? Days, so it's possibly because she needs a bath. That's why she is having pruritus. So does it happen? I mean, I think many of the students are not taking a bath for that long. So do they have pruritus? I don't know. So SpO2 is 95. That's good. So, but then it's a very less amount of oxygen now, and she was requiring 15 liters of oxygen earlier. So her tachypnea is still the same, probably, or less, but her oxygen requirement has come down dramatically. So why was she having the shortness of breath, and how is the shortness of breath related to her pedal edema? That is the question to our third semester students. But I think they are very, very passive. They are not at all actively saying anything other than yes sir, we are listening. So we'll have to ask it to the interns. And after Shrija, who is next? You are not Shrija. You are Shrija. Then who is Kirti? And who is that? Tejaswini. Huh? Okay, so Tejaswini is going to tell us why is this pedal edema? How do we explain it with the shortness of breath? What is causing a shortness of breath? Like in that man, we could not really tell what was causing a shortness of breath. This patient, we really know what is. And if we share the logbook link with these students, they will also be able to figure it out, hopefully. I have not gone through that logbook, but hopefully in that logbook, people have explained why she has got shortness of breath. Because there we also have an X-ray chest, which is showing some problems in the lungs. And we have a CT, which is showing the beautiful findings in the lungs. So what is that happening in the lungs? And if we auscultate her, we will hear some crepitations, which again tell us that there is something wrong in the alveoli. The alveoli and probably the interstitium. So this lady is having a lung disease, which is causing why the pedal edema. So this much only Dr. Tejaswini will tell us. So how does pedal edema happen in a lung disease, in a chronic lung disease? How does a person develop pedal edema? Yeah, it's difficult when we are basically picking on people for your sake, the third semester, who are quite conveniently silent behind their home screens. We are picking on the interns as a punishment for their, having passed, so that they are away. Because when you are picked on, you get. So what could it be?
Cor pulmonale.
Very good. So what is cor pulmonale? Yeah, there is something in the pulmonary problem, and we know that cor pulmonale is
Pulmonary hypertension and left heart right failure.
yes, pulmonary hypertension. So when there is a chronic lung disease and there is hypoxia, hypoxia causes pulmonary vasoconstriction. That will lead to increased pulmonary arterial pressures. That pulmonary arterial pressure will dilate the right heart, because that is where the pressure goes. And the right heart, if it is dilated, then it can fail. And when it fails, the hydrostatic pressure in these veins will increase. The capillaries here, the hydrostatic pressure is increased. That's why the fluid is coming out into the skin. So you see, what you are seeing here is the fluid is coming out into the skin because of increased hydrostatic pressure, which is happening because of a destroyed lung. So why did her lung get destroyed? That's another beautiful story. So something happened to us in the last 15 years to 3 years. We are not very sure. There was one intern called Dr. Kruti here. No? Kruti?
Krupa, sir.
Krupa, yeah. Dr. Krupa. So Dr. Krupa has done that log, and I'm not sure which UG has done. I would like Shreya to contact one of the UGs here and make a fresh log, especially with the details of history of since 15 years. Maybe they can talk to the patient. She is quite alert and good now. Previously when she had come, she was in altered sensorium. She was drowsy. And at that time we found that her creatinine was 10. Like you saw one patient whose creatinine was 0.9, that was normal. And this patient's creatinine was 10. Why was it 10? We found that she had some other telltale evidence of glomerulonephritis because there were RBCs in her urine and there were proteinuria also. Although later on the proteinuria came down, when we tested it, it came down.
24 hour came down.
Yeah, 24-hour was not significant, and that was because very quickly she recovered. Although in spite to dialyze her, and currently she is not on dialysis, isn't it? She has received some 3-4 dialysis for acute renal failure. So this was acute renal failure. So this was acute renal failure due to acute glomerulonephritis. Very, very interesting condition which we saw in 3 people who had come here at the same time. One person had a mild glomerulonephritis, another person had a very similar severe glomerulonephritis with 10 creatinine, but interestingly we did not dialyze her and she became alright. And she went home earlier than her. This lady had so much of comorbidities because of her earlier lung problem which was there for 15 years. So she could not take that or whatever. But whatever it is, Dr. A.V. insisted that we dialyze her. And because of her insistence, we gave her dialysis and she is much better now. And 3-4 dialysis, her creatinine has come down now?
3.9.
3.9. So from 10 it's 3.9, just like the other lady, and hopefully slowly it will completely come down. So why did she have this acute renal failure? So all her problems this time was just acute renal failure. Whereas her previous problems were lung disease, which was causing cor pulmonale, increased pulmonary artery pressures. And this time with the renal failure, again the load on the heart was more because it could not excrete the fluid. So there was more load on the left ventricle. So that again increased the pulmonary artery pressure, which caused the edema this time. So her edema is basically because of increased pulmonary artery pressures, which is, if it is confined only to the right ventricle, is called as right ventricular failure, and if it is only because of lung disease, it's called cor pulmonale. So currently we are thinking, because we have got very good evidence of lung disease, we are thinking it's cor pulmonale, but she also had renal failure. So it is possible that because she had a acute left ventricular failure also, which was not shown on the echocardiogram because the LV would have been contracting, but still the load was high, and that is the reason she had a diastolic failure good enough to add to that prior pulmonary arterial pressure, which was already raised. So that caused the edema. So we have got a person in encephalopathy there somewhere. We'll visit him. That will be interesting. Now, so this is the no diabetic or a first time diabetic? Known diabetic for how long? 20 years known diabetic, and she came with, what was the symptoms of diabetic ketoacidosis that she came with?
She came with shortness of breath, pain abdomen, and nausea, and altered states.
So shortness of breath, nausea, altered sensorium, osmotic changes in the brain causing cerebral edema, that caused altered sensorium. But that was not the ketones. If you have only ketosis, do you land up in altered sensorium? Can you? Or can the acidosis make you go into altered sensorium?
Both,
So,
it's mixed result.
did she have diabetic ketoacidosis or did she have just increased blood glucose, hyperosmolar, non-ketotic?
6.9.
Yeah, she had acidosis of 6.9. So, ketones were also positive. So, pH was very low, 6.9. That is almost life-threatening.
Bicarb is
So,
1.3.
1.3 bicarb, that is dangerous. The normal bicarb is 22. 1.3, that was very, very dangerous. And our team, you can see Dr. Ajit is holding the camera, Dr. Vaishnavi, Dr. Chandana, Dr. So many people, I mean. So many people's names, Dr. Arun, Dr. Kirti,
Shreya, sir.
Dr. Shreya,
Tejashwini.
Dr. Tejaswini, Srija, and Dr. Vittal.
Okay.
The most important pivot is of course AV.
Casualty.
Yeah, the casualty, huh?
Primary
Oh,
casualty.
KV, sorry, KV. Yeah, the primary person who managed, and she is the senior most now, second year.
PG/1.
And so, yeah, ICU PGs and everybody, Dr. Vinay. So they are the ones who rescued her from a at home. She wouldn't have survived. So this is the wonder of modern medicine. You can actually save a life, and you did that. So how did you save the life of this patient? Because you corrected her biggest problem of diabetic ketoacidosis is insulin deficiency. She had severe insulin deficiency, because of which what was happening inside her body? The glycolytic cycles, they were not being driven by insulin, so they were going into recruiting fat for the energy source, because there had no glucose inside the cell. Glucose was not entering the cell. The insulin makes the glucose enter the cell. No glucose inside the cell drive the other machinery, that is the fats. So from the fat they were making energy but that was also producing ketones, and those ketones were acidic, and that acidosis could have finished her off. So she was having a lot of nausea, vomiting because of that acidosis, but on timely administration of insulin, the glucose again started going into the cell, and again this glycolytic pathways are activated, and the ketogenic machinery stopped. So the ketone production stopped, and now she is free of ketones in her urine, and she is very, very awake and very, very alert, and she is much better. So sagam plate lo, and aa sagam plate lo pappulu, వేరే సగంలో కూరగాయలు పండ్లు. This is what a normal person should consume. A normal person should not consume Coke, Pepsi, pizza. I mean, not every day at least.
White flour.
That's for a very, very some occasions like birthdays, once a year. But then if you have too many friends, 365 friends, then it's difficult. So, but then yes, those things is COVID, isn't it? And this retrovirus is one which was discovered in 1980s, and since then the entire world in the last 40 years has been grappling with it. And we have got some medications now for this retrovirus, which we call as highly active antiretroviral therapy, and she is on that medication also, which is yeah. So that is those medications are tenofovir, lamivudine, and dolutegravir. So previously she was taking tenofovir, efavirenz, and lamivudine. Now she is taking tenofovir, lamivudine, and dolutegravir. And she has been on that, but did she stop it for some time? Sometime did she stop it? Who knows the history of this patient? We have the e-log, of course. Ravin, do you know the history? Did she stop it for some time?
Around last year April.
Last year April, that is 2020 April.
Discontinued for around 3 to 4 months.
So 3 to 4 months it was discontinued, again it's restarted. But in the meantime, when she discontinued, her cells would have gone down, and then those CD4 cells, if it goes down, the infections come over. That's what people have learned over the last 40 years. So we found that she had one very severe infection, which was looking like very similar to COVID. You know, it was looking as if the entire lung is taken up by the entire alveoli are filled with fluid. So you can see that all in the e-log, all her X-rays and CT scans are there. You will find that the alveoli are stacked with fluid. They are just showing a ground glass appearance. And then in some areas, those ground glasses have been broken, pavement, septation, interlobular. So this is how interstitial lung disease inflammation happens. Starts with alveolitis, alveolar inflammation, involves the interstitium, then there is interlobular, fibrosis and septations. So this is the mechanism of interstitial lung disease. But majority, when we say interstitial lung disease, we think of idiopathic, because we do not know why this inflammation is happening. But in this lady, we know why this interstitial lung disease is happening. It was because of a very interesting organism which is stained by which stain is this organism? This is a very common MCQ, so we are again picking on Tejaswini. Giemsa stain can stain it, even maybe sometimes Gram stain if we are lucky. But we did all those stains and we didn't find it, is it? So we stained it, we stained a sputum for all that. We could not find it, but we are still sure that given the scenario of the low CD4 counts, the HART which she had stopped, and the retrovirus obviously, and the pathology that we are witnessing in the lung, the interstitial disease, and a severe hypoxia. So one thing which we could have thought in this time of the pandemic is there is COVID. But we didn't think it to be COVID because she has a stronger background of the retrovirus. So, and the COVID also turned out to be negative. Although we know that in 30% of people, it can be negative. So either it was a COVID, negative COVID, which we were treating as pneumocystis carinii, or it was actually pneumocystis carinii. And what has happened? She has improved. So I can see that her oxygen saturation is very nice, 94, but her oxygen requirement is very less. Because since the last 1 week when I was coming here, her oxygen requirement was 15 liters. It was very high flow. And now I can see that it's just 2 liters. The ball is just below that. So it's very, very heartening to see that she has recovered so well. బాగా మంచిగా మీరు రికవరీ అయింది. So lungs మంచిగా ఇప్పుడు పని చేస్తారు. So what was that medication which did that trick? Practically saved her life. So something like this. It's a very, very cheap medication at one point of time, it used to be in all primary health centers. Septran DS for all kinds of bacteria it was used heavily. But nowadays, so for all those bacteria, it is of no use now because it was so heavily used for each and everything. Even viral fevers, people used to pop this. So it is of no use now. But it is still useful for this very rare bacteria called Pneumocystis carinii. And we are giving twice 2 tablets thrice a day. And it is basically what? It is trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole. Isn't it? So all of you have to, because when you learn pharmacology, you will see all these things in your books. But it is better to see them in the bedside and learn from the bedside because you will know what is the utility of these medications. I had seen it once in being used in one such patient. That will ring in your brain, and that's how you will remember it better than just memorizing it. So that's our idea to show you. Yes, and we are very glad that he has made such a good recovery. And on Saturday. Huh? So who knows about her? Who's presenting her? Okay. Huh? Please, huh? Yeah. Yeah. This rash comes. There's a very interesting mnemonic on fever and rash. Very sick person must take double exercise.
Double bed.
Huh?